record it and send it directly over to you, Steve.
Okay.
So
many familiar faces here.
that's
Our regulars.
some new one as well.
Yeah, some new. Nice. Hi, Rondell. Okay. Let me just.
Hey, Benjamin.
Benjamin and Randall, we can make the Barrett clan.
I noticed that earlier when you were talking.
All right. So I think Nori, Stephen, up to you now.
Did you say Nori or Lauri?
I think it was myself and Stephen. Stephen, do you want to introduce the room or do you want me to?
Yeah, I can introduce. I mean, this room came out of the Catalyst Circle meeting 5, which Daw kindly referred to in town hall about some of the issues that came up in that room around lack of support, about problems around owning who does what, all kind of the emergent problems that come with distributed organization as we evolve, you know. And this breakout room is trying to sort of address those issues and to provide positive solutions. There's participants here from the facilitators who came together a couple of weeks ago, and the secretaries who came together last week. And we had our first meeting today as a meet and greet, as I said, in town hall. So we hope to discuss how can we support Circle, how can we best do that, what problems do we need to address, what is the most urgent problems, that kind of thing. So Nori, if you have anything to say on that.
Just there has been a little bit of community conversation around this on the Discord channel. So I just put a link to the record of that Stephen has compiled into the Git book. Yeah. So if you want to use that, we can use that as well as a reference or a resource.
Maybe very short history, a little bit behind this controversial, let's say, situation in the last Catalyst Circle meeting. We had the situation that, yeah, we failed a little bit by the deadline to submit the proposal in the correct time frame. So the proposal was not submitted. The budget proposal for Catalyst Circle was not submitted in a correct line to a Project Catalyst. And then we had the problem of saying, okay, how do we handle this problem? And then Daw stepped out and says, oh, okay, let's use his superpower. We said, oh, okay, this is great and good and everything, but we should be careful as well too, because our goal is to represent community interests, needings, whatnot. And should the Catalyst Circle make a decision like this to act very clear out of the, let's say, clear official lines? And yes, I know I don't want to make a devil out of a screen.
I just want to clarify that it's not the Circle decided it. I decided it. IOG decided to do that. The Circle doesn't have decision-making authority. The Circle is a problem. It's a sensor array, right? It's a human sensor array. It identifies problems. There's never a topic of deciding if the Circle can decide to do something out of band, you know, like IOG can do something out of band, because right now we're kind of like serving as like a temporary custodians of the governance process. We're trying to limit interventions, you know, but this was a clear situation where the long term was far outweighed the short-term consequences of this foul. So just clarifying that.
Well, I would say, for example, I'm half agree with this. I totally agree that you came up with this decision, but the Circle agreed on this. And for example, for my part, as I am part of a circle, I feel responsible as well for this choice. So you make a choice in the circle, which is also a choice which all other Catalyst circle members have to represent to the people who elected them.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't made in a vacuum. It was important that we share with everybody very transparently what was the rationale and why was it made so, and ask for, and because of course it's relevant to the circle, like asking for basically like consent to do it. That's about it. I mean, I guess things happen. This is circle version first iteration, I would say. I think we have a bit of a benefit to make some mistakes at this point of time. Actually, it's inevitable that mistakes will be made.
So you said that the circle is not a decision-making body; it's a problem-sensing body. But you said that in the context of this particular decision. So, do you think there's a kind of a tension between decisions and problems sensing in the Catalyst community? When is it the right time to step in, and when is it the right time for the community to seek autonomy?
What?
To seek autonomy, yeah.
Well, the way I see it is like, we're trying to seed over time, different centers of decentralization and legitimacy, right? Like the very first one was with the voters, right? Like the concept that you can get like thousands of people to vote on proposals that are like in depth and technical, it's like a very controversial idea, and over time we establish actually people are seeing like, oh, actually voters, they're actually performing well, they're making good decisions, and then really just because of the merit, right, of performance, there's more and more legitimacy to them, and then the funds under control of this method grows over time. Same for the CAs, like there's like they're growing their legitimacy because they're doing a great job. We do surveys and we actually ask people, do you trust those ratings? And more than 1,000 people replied in the survey and says they strongly agree. That there's something between agree and strongly agree that these ratings are good. We're gonna build this legitimacy of challenge teams, and we're gonna build the legitimacy of a validator layer that's gonna come up, and right now in the circle, it's like early stages, right? Like the circle has not earned legitimacy. It was like the same way that voters didn't just were given legitimacy. They started with a $250,000 fund to govern, and it happened over time. And that actually created conditions for accountability and actually like a healthy growth. So Circle 1 doesn't have any formal decision-making power. And I think over time, let's see next round with more funding and more resourcing, what comes out of it. And I believe that, over time, what we learned from this pilot will have fundamental influence on the future of decentralized governance in Cardano. It's a matter of time and kind of like gradual progress.
So it's a matter of Circle gaining competency. It needs to become competent at what it does, and if it hasn't, as you say, this Circle version 1 is like a test case. It's had its setbacks, but setbacks also help us learn lessons, I suppose, as well. But as we go forward, we still need to improve our competency. By we, I mean Circle needs to improve our competency to such a level that it gains the trust to the level, for example, as you compared it with CAs and with the voter system. So we need to get it to that. That's the kind of what we're aiming for. So.
Yeah, the first test is going to be this proposal. We're going to see if the governed, right, if the voters are value the circle enough that they want to fund it. So that's gonna be a great point, and it was actually important to get to this moment where people can actually go and legitimize it. Like not doing that would be take us back, right? Because it would still be in the place where like, are we, do even people interested in this?
Nori, do you have any thoughts on?
I think legitimacy is not just competence. There's also a significant element of trust. And I do appreciate the transparency of the circle. Everything's recorded. There's careful minutes taken. There's opportunities to provide feedback. So I think as a mechanism, we're starting to gain trust of the community, and the transparency really helps on that. And I do know that special privileges were invoked to get that proposal in last minute, but the way it was done, if you watched meeting number 5 and the recording of it, you can see the process, the exploring of the feelings of each of the members when they didn't feel that was right, and talking it through, and eventually coming to consensus that really the future of the circle is really important. And that's kind of, I think it made me feel good afterwards that kind of conversation happened, and that there was that openness and the ability of people to say, hey, this doesn't feel right, and then talk it through, and nothing was forced. And I know that the circle doesn't have decision-making ability, but I think you do need circle consent if it's like, otherwise, why have that circle, So, so it was really great to see that process unfold. And yeah, and I put my thoughts on there because I think that was one of the 3 things that I saw in the meeting. But there was also the volunteerism versus paid professionals. And then the other one was the communication expectation setting. But that's just kind of a procedural thing. And I think that's something we can learn to get better at. But I think, yeah, the meat of the conversation is really around the trust and legitimacy of the circle itself. And I see it going in a really good direction.
I mean, I'd like to hear, because the facilitators and secretaries met for the first time today, and I think there's obviously a need to support Circle. So be interested to hear from Circle members, what support do they need most, first, quickest? Is it very simple things like just getting the minutes done and chasing agenda items? Is that the most important thing? Or are there other priorities? It'd be nice to hear from Dean. Would you like to say something on that?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, how can facilitators and secretaries support you in Circle? What would make your job easier as a Circle member?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I guess, would be just making sure that the structure is met for each meeting. We don't. I think there's always it's easy to get stuck on a subject, especially if everybody's passionate about it. And we just maybe also like communicating during those discussions to allow us to understand how much more time we have left to discuss it, and then maybe even scheduling things that aren't completed for a future date. This way we can always get back to it, especially if it's something that is very important to the community.
Loris, would you like to say anything on how we can support you?
Yeah, so basically, Dean already mentioned a lot of things, and yeah, that is, we have a lot of topics we can discuss, and we are passionate about, our area, about topics in our area, so we can discuss a lot. Actually, we are doing usually some discussions, of course, in meetings of the official time, so we don't have to, spend all the time on those discussions. But facilitator usually is, the person who organizes and tries, to stick to the schedule as well, helps us to focus. And sometimes, it's good that you give a call and listen, we have a meeting in 2 days. So is there anything special you want to discuss additionally? Just drop a message, and that usually helps a lot. So yeah, that's kind of, the organization part is very important. So sometimes, we forget about something, or maybe there's some super deadline which you have to meet. So that and from this we definitely learned that we need somebody who is like seeing the bigger picture of all around what's happening, and who's doing everything. And I suppose it will change with Catalyst Circle too, but currently it's like still we're trying to figure out how to organize, how to do, what are the priorities, how to approach those priorities, and different groups have different priorities. So it's like kind of huge thing, and I think somebody who is in the middle of this can really help us to sort it out, or at least organize, like, okay guys, you have this topic here, maybe let's discuss on a separate meeting, Felix, you, and then just meet up, discuss, and maybe bring a solution. So otherwise we can discuss on the meeting, so it's like also something like organize, like, listen guys, we don't have time for discussion, that okay, just a reminder, if you want to discuss, okay, go there. So this is what usually helps a lot, that kind of structured organization. And it's good that it's done by somebody who is not a circle member, because otherwise the circle member has to do 2 jobs at the same time, and it's not possible. We already tried, so it's like yeah, so basically then he can't represent his group fully. So that's kind of thing. So yeah, and this is super important role. We understand, we appreciate for stepping up, and yeah, and so that's kind of quick feedback.
Felix, do you have any thoughts on how facilitators and secretaries could help you?
Totally second what just Laura said. I think the most important to start off already is really to facilitate the next meeting, to draft an agenda already up front. So because right now it's Victor who's facilitating the meeting, and this is just already not really fair, because he has to do his own job already of representing the CA's interest and meetings. So by facilitating the session itself, I think also for him it's not fair to burden so much on him. And especially for the agenda already, to come up with an agenda already, best would be 1 week before, so that circle members can have a check on them already, edit something or whatnot. And additional to this, I think one problem, what is really very current, is the time commitment by the circle members. So I think that all of the circle members have a bunch of things to do already, and that it's quite difficult just to enable and find the time to catch up with some stuff. And maybe that the facilitators and secretaries over time, they can help also a little bit. Preparing the slides for the town hall, for example, saying what needs to be discussed, how do we want to present it, what are important topics right now, what happened last meeting, what needs to be discussed in the next after town hall breakout room, for example. Contact the circle members, say, hey, are you able to be there? Are you motivated? Whatnot. Yep. So a little bit, I think, to build the world around the Catalyst Circle, to drive the first infrastructure there, and to keep it close to the community.
Great. Dor, how can the facilitators and secretaries help you? What help would you like support? Sorry, Dor.
That was a question to whom?
To Dor, sorry.
Dr. Dor.
So my mic is not maybe working properly. Sorry, Dor.
No, but okay, but like what?
Okay.
So what's the question?
So the question is, what help would you like the most from secretaries and facilitators? Or what would you, or put it another way, what would you most like to see from a facilitator to support you and a secretary to support you?
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think that personally, I think both of them, I think, should really kind of live and feel like kind of accountable to for the circle to accomplish its stated goals, right? So like while we're all, while we're all, kind of puny humans with their ego and our, our own things that trouble us, and also busy. And we're also like full of like, our own group that we represent and their interests and their, so we're all full of it. But, we need an anchor, we need people who really hold like the entire vision of the circle and who keep thinking about, okay, so we have this like, I don't know, 7 or 8 like charged humans. How do we get the most out of them? Okay, like how from those moments in between the meetings, we produce the most amount of benefit for, the Cardano community in general, right? Like so how can we, signal the most important problems and like be the most efficient and like not causing rifts amongst each other as we're trying to do that, make sure that ideas are, that it's a platform for, evolution of ideas and not, and not like, someone dominating the conversation. So that's kind of the general way I see it.
It's funny, I kind of noticed a consistent theme of a kind of a need for a kind of for a structure for someone who is not, doesn't have a dog in the fight, if you like to use that expression, is someone is outside of it, outside of Circle, and can provide facilitation support to see as you say, although to see a kind of the bigger vision of the Catalyst Circle, to see it in terms of its whole. I mean, sorry, I'm kind of running out of thoughts here a bit. But so I'd like to open it up to anyone else who'd like to comment on this. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? Hello, Chris.
Hi guys.
Hi.
You guys are speaking my language. I'd like to introduce myself. You haven't really met me probably before. My name is Chris Keller. I'm a big supporter of you guys, investor with you guys, and trying to build with you guys. But I hear what you're talking about here and the struggles you guys are having, and the circle particularly. I was a race car driver in my past days, recently unemployed, but as a race car driver, we use a lot of circles and a lot of engineers, and these guys are really talented engineers and maybe not as great as driving the race car. And I think that's what they're kind of portraying here. They got the wheels. This wheel is great. It's sturdy. They did a great job, but they need some motivators. They need someone to take this product across the line, and they need the rest of the communities to step in and start cheering on this product. And you might find a little humor in my proposal just because I did submit one. I hope it didn't get rejected, but figured I'd introduce and say hello.
Thanks, Chris. So your point is mostly about motivation and getting people interested in where to go next. I mean, Jonathan, do you have any ideas or any thoughts on, or Tivo?
I was just thinking a lot of it I feel to do is a lot of it I feel is to do with personal relationships as well. It would be nice to create rapport between Circle members. And there was a question that came up about the Catalyst Alliance Discord server from Felix today, was that should we shut that down? And I was thinking around, it's before the Catalyst Circle appeared, the Catalyst Alliance was trying to create some sort of equivalency, I suppose. And that came together very quickly and very well because there was a lot of rapport in amongst members. And whereas the Catalyst Circle is far more diverse, I suppose, and siloed in terms of where you each come from. So I don't know how you create that rapport, whether it's just a case of spending time with each other. And I know that's very difficult and challenging with the roles you're all playing, but some fun activities. I don't know, go paintballing or something.
Well, bonding exercise.
Yeah, painful is
okay.
nothing like shooting everybody, trying to
Mock warfare.
hit somebody with like giant balls of paint to, to bring people together.
Well, we used to do that with race cars and employee motivation programs to get people to the racetrack. Wouldn't you like to go drive a Ferrari? Would that be fun for a day? Or, sponsor a drink at Monaco, get a bunch of, high roller whales together and watch them with the ADA car going around the track on your boat. Just a suggestion, because it's a motivation tactic. We did use it.
I suppose in the absence of a rapport, then you can at least have understanding, and I think Laura's was talking about how, it's interesting because this circle is not something that's evolved naturally in the community like the Catalyst Alliance did. It was an initiative that sort of was suggested, if you like, by IOG. And a process was begun and representatives from the community were formed. So each representative represents a certain interest, if you like, and those interests don't necessarily chime all together, perhaps. And there's not necessarily a natural rapport between those interests either. Should there be a rapport between them? That's another question. So, John, what do you think on those issues?
It's representatives from different parts of a very big system. And so being able to, the circle should help everybody think at an overall systems level. And there are going to be times when some parts of the systems have different needs than other parts. And the circle provides a chance to come up with good, deep reflection on that. Well, how do we solve this? How do we make sure that everybody's interests are handled? And I think as you gain experience over time, it's going to be more and more able to take on broader responsibilities.
Charlie, do you have any thoughts on how Circle can manage its different interests or its different representatives?
Well, the process of solving that problem is certainly something that the facilitator role and secretary role help with on a structural level. But to Chris's point, you alluded to this, and everyone sort of alludes to this, but I brought this up in the meeting this morning, and I'll continue to bring it up as long as the question is welcome. Circle discussions make sense and seem cohesive when you have a shared interest, shared identity, shared goal, or shared vision of any sort. There are a lot of things that can fill this sort of role. John, I watched I have your book. I've been reading that, and I've just sort of looked into sociocracy from a couple angles. And what strikes me is how necessary it is in order to have a cohesive conversation to have some sort of shared terrain. Even the analogy of the octopus, which was a good one that you used in your TED Talk, assumes a shared body. There's this aspect of cohesion that must be at play. And Dor, you've sort of proposed a couple things, even in the blog post, the initiating blog post that announced the circle. And I brought this up this morning. So I'm sort of moving into this question zone, or sort of problem definition zone in my next few statements. To answer your question directly, certainly the facilitating of the conversation, but I just really feel this strong sense that more conversation needs to be had around what consolidated vision, and you can pick anything, but what consolidated vision can this group of very diverse individuals, there's power in that, by the way, how can we cohesively come together and solve a problem, any problem? Like, for instance, in the meetings that I've heard, I have not heard all of them, but I heard the most recent one and the proposal that has been submitted. I did not hear any correlation directly with the 4 particular points that were proposed in the blog for the circle in the first place, nor did I hear anything explicit. I haven't read the proposal, but just hearing all the conversation around it, I have not heard anything specifically highlighting how it supports this identity as a sensor array. Sensor array does not mandate funding, or maybe it does, but a proper definition of sensor array would illuminate that. And that is not something that I've particularly heard discussed. So those are some thoughts, more question marks than
yeah, there's a lot of questions there. I mean, perhaps Dawn would like to respond to that as well.
Yeah, sure. And after this, I need to go. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I see four goals outlined in the. I mean, you said a lot of things, but just to pick randomly one of them. Okay. So one goal was facilitate the different functional groups in Catalyst to communicate with each other. We did that. We're doing that great. I think what we've seen with the CAs is really proves it, you know, because we actually all the different parts of Catalyst work together to make sure this round is a success. So that worked. Provide a heads up when any red lines are crossed within a certain group. So a few people, I don't know if we crossed any red lines, but definitely, you know, we saw, like, I think both SPOs and proposers and I think toolmakers talking about like the challenge of like slow funding rounds, you know, and we were able to express it, come together about it, and formulate, you know, a solution for it. I mean, the first one was suggest improvements on plans and processes that shape Project Catalyst. I think we did a lot of that. Like a lot of the proposals we made and challenges that we're proposing are about that, and lots of stuff about actually the circle itself, the processes. I think there was like a bit of an upgrade. And the fourth one is define the election process for the next elections. And for this, we just didn't have time. So we still have time to do that. So I'm not sure where your criticism coming from. Yeah, I don't know. You know, I wonder, there were so many statements you said. I was kind of like not agreeing with much of those. I just wonder, was there any other open question you want me to address before I go?
Maybe Felix wants to weigh in first.
Yes, because one thing, I think maybe we didn't properly communicate it so far, but I think one of the most value I have recognized so far in the Catalyst Circle is what Jastor pointed out with the CA program. And this was not really highly discussed in the Catalyst Circle meeting. It was a problem. They communicated and said, hey, we risk not having enough community advisors for Fund 6. And it was quite kind of spontaneous and intuitive. And there the Catalyst Circle really showed his value. So the problem was shared between all the different groups. A solution was drafted extremely fast, was executed extremely successful by including all different groups. So onboarding the CAs, outreach by IoG, offering places and workshops and everything to bring all the CAs in and make this a fund a successful round. And I think this is something where I think there's a lot of value. So it wasn't planned, it wasn't organized. It really popped up. Everybody saw the problem, took it as serious, and directly jumped into the executing a solution with his communities, with his groups.
I mean, I would respond to my own view, responding to you, Charlie, in tracking Circle from the beginning. I think it's broadly been a history of successes in terms of what it was originally trying to do, what it was setting out to do. There's a couple of things that are missing, maybe the voting system. There is some organizational issues that need to be addressed in terms of, you know, ownership of issues and those kinds of things. And perhaps picking up on your point, maybe Circle or we actually need to communicate better how our achievements are aligning more with our original vision. And I think Dawn just mentioned that, and Felix just mentioned that our achievements do align with our original vision. And we are honest about where that we don't, like, for example, developing the voting system and all that out, or having to make a difficult decision about putting a proposal in out of band, or not being well organized, let's put it that way. But those are quite relatively trivial, I would say, when you compare it to that. Norrie.
A couple of things. One, I totally agree that the circle seems to have had a lot of great wins. Maybe part of the problem is just the communication around there. I think we should be celebrating the wins pretty hard to say, hey, here's some really great successes. So like the CA story, I think is something that we should be celebrating as a community and kind of celebrate those successes that the circle has. And then the other comment I wanted to make was around Charlie's thing around having a circle can have disparate and diverse members, but the circle by definition needs to have a shared aim so that they're all like working in the same general direction. And with a community as diverse as the current circle is, that aim has to be very high level to be really inclusive, to encapsulate all that and say, we're all moving in this direction. So I think it's good to have that, because then when you're working at that level, everybody can contribute in their own different ways to pull in that direction. And it's easier to achieve consensus when you have a shared aim instead of always battling and combating each other. I don't think that's going to be super healthy. And maybe if that's continuously happening, then the circle's paying attention to things that are too low level and they should be going up one.
That's an interesting concept. That's a really interesting concept in terms of how high the vision should be in order to create a commonality amongst people. And also addresses the issue of what are fundamental Cardano values as well. What do we share? What values do we agree on, or can we agree on and support each other in the Cardano community? Maybe we should be thinking at that level. You know, I'd be interested in what either Loris or Jonathan would hear about, you know, in terms of shared values.
Sorry, I missed something. My computer died, so I just tried logging in.
Okay. Norrie was talking about kind of where to pitch the level at which we can share values amongst the different stakeholders, because different stakeholders have different interests, like stake pool operators against CAs, against IOG, against Cardano Foundation. Where should we, what common values can we share? Can we say that we can share?
So all the Cardano ecosystem is a one big family. So therefore, if one part doesn't work well, we are failing. All of us are failing. So we can, of course, run a nice blockchain, but there is, if there are no delegators, so it doesn't make sense. If you don't have tools, tool makers, again, and if you don't have like budget, etc., and then governments, all of things. So it's like we are still building, but we are not like, separate bodies. We are like a part of one larger community. And therefore, I don't even, think about that. Okay, is there some special place where we, work together? No, it's actually, whenever you have discussions and when you have discussions with other groups, you will feel that actually, you have some similar topics which you can discuss and some things, which overlap. And that's why it's actually not so complicated. Of course, they have, the deeper knowledge in some specific topics, but there's always something common we can discuss. So therefore, it's all about seeing the larger picture. If some kind of issue or problem we are moving all together will, help for the whole ecosystem, even though if it's not directly, helps your representatives, but overall, we see that, it will help. So
Hey,
therefore,
I'm going to be, I think, 5 minutes late. I'm trying to find a graceful point to exit a.
Hey, John, you're not on mute.
He is now.
Okay. So John, if you have to go, you can go.
No, I was telling somebody I'm going to stay longer. So
Okay.
please repeat your question.
No, it wasn't a question, John. But yeah, so you think, Loris, we might be overcomplicating things a bit. There's maybe common values that if we could just like, when it comes to the crux, we can see those quite clearly. It's like common sense issue.
So it's something that a sense of accomplishment and sense of larger goals or completing that. So that's kind of stuff. So we are all their volunteers, it's not like we are, fighting for some kind of, our own good there. So it's like, we're representing our people who voted us there and who trust him, and we have to basically deliver some results. So, but yes, so I think the goal, it's overall the goal which binds us together, the vision, and we understand that it's it's built from small blocks. It's not like one large block we have to create and deliver. So it's like all the small particles take together. So therefore we understand that that we are going towards the vision and
so Jonathan. Yeah. Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I think Felix probably nailed it there. It's maybe a communication thing more than anything else, is actually getting hold of the wins and communicating them within the circle. So maybe it's like an end of meeting warm fuzzy news story at the end, like we get just that gets shared, and then that's something that's also palatable to be put out to the wider community, just en masse as a routine thing. I think that would probably help celebrate the wins and raise the profile of the circle as well, and so it's not all contentious just coming from it.
So John, you're raising your hand.
Yes, they talk about transparency. Yes, trying to find a graceful way to leave. Well, I really want to be here and I'm supposed to be somewhere else. But I did want to suggest that a really good service that the team can provide to the Catalyst Circle is making sure that they reflect either at the end or at some point, best often at the end, about how did the meeting go and what went well and what could have gone better, so that there's a continuous development kind of, I don't know, pressure or leading on that. And there's a lot of that's been going on already, just informally and just naturally in the process. And I'm like going, yay, good on that, but it can be worked in consciously to try to make sure it's developing.
Thanks, John. Felix, you got your hand up.
And I do have to go. I will am planning to try to see you all on Friday.
Thanks. We're looking forward to that, John.
And cheering you.
Good.
I think another very important thing what the secretary and the facilitators could set up is a long-term impact tracking. Because when we speak, for example, about legitimacy, okay, maybe it's quite difficult to measure the impact of the Catalyst Circle right now. But for example, to say, okay, we supported the initiative of a rapid funding mechanism, which will be submitted right now. When voted and funded, this challenge takes place in November. Then proposals come and submit their proposals there. This means these proposals will go in action 3 months later. So we're speaking about January 2022 now. And when these projects will deliver impact. So now we speak already about what's there in 9 months, what was initiated and kicked off right now. And I think what is extremely valuable to track this over a long time. So this will be extremely difficult because there are more and more initiatives for sure coming up. But I think like in nature, you're never able to have the impact of what a factory is causing for climate change exactly right now. No, the impact you will see in 40, 50 years from now. And this is sometimes quite difficult to measure and to say, okay, how important is what is going on right now? Because we don't have the possibility to look so far. The Chinese governments, for example, they are extremely smart in this case. They are not like the Europeans or the Western or the Americans. They don't make 3 or 4 year plans. They make fucking 100-year plans and they track it. And this is why they became fucking dominant as well. So also by this setting up, okay, maybe there should be a tracking system of Catalyst Circle actions and impacts really for a long time. So a design around which is able to scale over time and to keep an overview and start small, but over time as the Catalyst Circle evolves to adapt also the design of this tracking, impact tracking. I think this would be a game changer a little bit, to start to think a little bit already, okay, how could this be done maybe?
Dean, I wouldn't mind your thoughts on, do you sometimes feel that you're maybe Circle's been too self-critical, is too close to the problems that's engaged with, and you can be too self-critical and you maybe need to see a bigger picture?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry, I have a little difficulty.
Sorry, my mic is not ready. Do you think sometimes being in circle, you're too close to things, and you may maybe too self-critical about things because you're too close to them, and you may need to see a bigger picture of the circle?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think that the fact that we have our communities and our circle, we're almost always in between. So we're never too close to one side. We kind of have to play a balancing act all the time. And you get the perspective of being on the inside and hearing all the other communities' inputs, but that's also being relayed from the larger communities. So there are, I guess, some times where your own emotion and your own feelings are relayed in the circle, but for the most part, you kind of have to cut that part out, and just it's more as a mouthpiece for the community, with some decision making internally, and with the assistance of the other circle members, of course, more so than feeling that you're obligated one way or the other.
Do you still have your hand up, Felix, or is that just no? Okay. Nori, would you like to contribute, or anyone else like to contribute?
Sure. I like Felix's idea of long-term impact tracking as a function of the admin team. I think we have the right, or we want to get to the right mechanisms and tools to make this possible. And that could be a function of that team, is to track successes. And then as the team evolves, track how the impact of those successes happen over time. Like some of the good things will be, we will have a challenge team around the rapid funding, so we can see how that works. We can do qualitative metrics around whether funding the circle will produce better results, because I think that's a good experiment. Like it could be that at a part-time or a 10th time salary, that it actually doesn't make any difference, because people still need full-time jobs and they're still going to struggle to find the time and all that. So maybe we need to evolve to full-time positions or something like that. But I think it's a good experiment, and we should be tracking the results of these over time, just because we are spending the community treasury, we are doing this experiment, and I think it could be part of the admin team function to track the results of that and help bring clarity around that. Pete, you have something? You're muted.
I am, and I was just trying to raise my hand using the iPad's automatic feature because Charlie's had his hand up first, so I think he's before me.
You haven't said anything, so you go ahead. Oh wait.
Just to add into this thing, there's a great technique out there. It's pirate metrics sort of concept is making me. I'm thinking of that as we guys are talking here, of like leading versus lagging metrics and sort of tracking this all the way through. Like there is the short term and there's a long term and there's the middle term. And there's things that we do right now that we could track that would show a couple things, but they don't have any impact that we can show. You know, like Felix was saying, like on the long term of, you know, climate control change, you know, and it's a different set of metrics that would track, you know, where it gets to all the way through. But the pirate metrics sort of look at, you know, are people even aware of the problem? Then are people acting on the problem? And then, you know, does it affect any of the money numbers? Then are people, you know, going back in retention numbers? Like how often are they, you know, repeating and returning to this thing to look at it, all the way getting down to, you know, sort of social impact numbers and how many people can we affect. And so just some thought to toss into the mix there, that a variety of different metrics built up to track different dimensions in time could be really helpful to understand our impact now and in the future.
I mean, tracking is a subject dear to my heart, but also it depends on the tracking system being in place in the first place. And having an infrastructure where we can track that, and that's part of the priority of facilitators and secretaries to hope to introduce that. Charlie, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, by the way, thank you all for engaging. This has been really, really productive. I feel like, for me at least, in understanding some of the thought processes around this. Just a couple more questions that I have. It's an interesting dynamic to hear about the productivity that's coming out, which I'm aware of, by the way. It wasn't that it wasn't communicated. It seems to be sort of an accidental byproduct of an unknown vision, which is why I continue to sort of push this question of what is the actual vision, especially. So by the way, yes, I congratulate. There's some tremendous efforts coming on, especially the one that I noticed my first time being a community advisor. I noticed that energy, that push that definitely came out of this collaborative conversation. It's hard for me to differentiate between a project or a proposal that simply recruited from diverse representative groups, different demographics, if you will, in the Cardano ecosystem, who simply came together as a brain trust or think tank and came up with proposals and what the circle is purporting to do. I understand this question of elections, but I don't know. I have sort of my own thoughts about how this could evolve into some sort of, again, representative think tank. Is that the vision that I'm potentially hearing evolve from this conversation? Does that make sense?
I mean, is it a question of trying to prejudge? I mean, what I'm getting through is a lot of what is Circle, but surely we need to let Circle be what it is already, you know, in a sense, you know, because Circle starts with a definition, and I talk from the experience of tracking it. At the beginning, there was a very kind of clear, okay, here's the definition, but like everything, a definition quickly runs away with itself, okay, and that's what's happened. But it hasn't been a runaway vehicle that's gone into a car crash. It's actually achieved things, okay, but hasn't achieved everything it set out to do. And now you seem to be saying, well, where's the vision? But surely the vision is a work in progress.
That's fair. That's fair.
Totally agree, but Charlie also, I think it's extremely valuable to have a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
So I really hope you go on, because
yeah,
not to be polite, be honest and question, critic the things. I think it's a very important part.
Well, I hope it's not offensive. I don't mean that at
No,
all. I have massive respect for you all.
You're not offensive at all, Charlie.
No.
Okay.
No, I've been in similar positions in the past myself, and I really appreciate your perspective, Charlie. And I think it's, as I would echo Felix, that don't stop asking the questions and the perspectives you're doing, you know, and keep pushing. Because, you know, we can't rest on our laurels, you know, and what I just said just now can sound like a platitude. Perhaps maybe I am saying platitudes. Okay? Maybe I've evolved into a situation where I'm making an apology to Circle. You know, that could be one perspective. You know, so it is good to address these things and bring them out. So absolutely. And
also a question who repeats does not mean that the question is running in the circle. It just means that the question is still not solved and is still up to date and still needs to be solved. And the most important questions in humanity are still not solved. When you look back, there are some philosophical questions the humanity faced in thousands of years. And those are still the most important questions. So, and the most important job from the philosophers is to not stop to ask these questions, even if they are uncomfortable. So it's important to sometimes stay at the question, even when you know the goal of the question is just to repeat the question. And this provokes already an evolution by itself, by continuing repeating the question constantly. And when it's the right question, then the question will be there still in 3 years and 30 years. And when we come to governance and social models and decentralization and everything, it's a very important question, and we will not be able to solve them in a short or middle term. So the only thing what I think is dangerous is to expect from the Catalyst Circle to find any kind of answers to those questions. What really is your goal? I don't think that the first 10, 20 Catalyst Circles will be able to define or to answer this question when everything is working right. I would be more in doubt if catalyst circle number 3 can answer your question with a perfect question. Then I would say, oh, that's strange. That's more something wrong.
It reminds me